Every single Tuesday morning, Marcus pulls up to his corporate office at precisely 8:44, driving a pristine charcoal gray luxury SUV that he just leased last autumn.
His contractual obligation demands $865 every month for the next 3 years, a heavy sum for a mid-level digital director pulling in $96,000 annually.
He deliberately selects the most prominent stall right across from the main entrance glass doors, ensuring his wheels remain fully visible to the senior executives assembling upstairs for their
weekly operations briefing.
For Marcus, this European vehicle isn't merely mechanical transit. It serves as a high-stakes professional identity token built on predatory financing terms that completely hollow out his monthly
disposable income.
Meanwhile, Alina quietly glides into the furthest perimeter of that exact same concrete lot at 8:15 a.m. behind the wheel of a faded 2019 sedan she bought second-hand 4 years back for $21,800. Up front, a noticeable scrape mars her front fender, an aesthetic flaw she persistently overlooks because it possesses absolutely zero impact on the mechanical reliability of her daily commute.
Alina serves as the regional director of systems architecture within the same firm, earning a base salary of $116,000.
Marcus holds a cumulative net worth of roughly $16,500. A figure constantly dragged down by high-interest consumer cards, a massive automobile lease liability, an uncollateralized personal loan from
a tropical getaway, and a meager retirement balance of $7,900 funded by a bare minimum 2% paycheck contribution.
Alina's audited net worth sits comfortably at $1.25 million. One employee projects a masterful illusion of material abundance, while the other possesses genuine, unencumbered liquid freedom.
They occupy identical floor space and earn within a remarkably comparable baseline, yet the massive chasm dividing their long-term economic trajectories is forged entirely by ordinary choices,
repeated over time. How could two professionals on the exact same hallway end up in entirely different universes?
Their primary divergence sits directly on display out in the elements every single day. One prioritized immediate peer validation, while the other quietly optimized for capital compounding.
That vehicular choice marked the precise moment their financial pathways fractured.
This analysis explores exactly why the most stable, self-made wealth builders across the nation systematically operate cars that completely defy societal expectations. They don't skip luxury models because they lack the purchasing power. Rather, their core psychological framework regarding capital allocation operates on a plane so completely detached from mainstream consumer programming that their choice of vehicle becomes the ultimate testament to the very philosophy that generated their multi-million-dollar balance sheets.
Let's dissect the raw numbers. The absolute midpoint price allocation for verified millionaires during their most recent automobile transaction hovered around $31,500.
For individuals boasting an ultra-high net worth exceeding $10 million, that transaction benchmark merely tilted up to $41,500.
These figures emerge directly from landmark national longitudinal wealth assessments, representing some of the most comprehensive behavioral evaluations of affluent households ever recorded.
Consider that data against the broader economic landscape. The typical transactional cost for a standard factory vehicle has surged past $48,500.
This implies the typical citizen is allocating significantly more capital toward a depreciating asset than the average established millionaire chooses to commit to theirs.
Furthermore, comprehensive automotive industry consumer data reveals that 61% of domestic households generating more than $250,000 annually deliberately opt for
standard, non-luxury transport like Hondas, Toyotas, and everyday Fords. Think deeply about that metric for a moment.
These are high-earning professionals pulling in massive monthly cash flows who could easily clear a luxury dealership invoice without a second thought, yet the overwhelming majority choose to
navigate traffic in a regular sedan or a utility pickup truck,
A mere 39% of those high bracket earners choose to purchase premium foreign nameplates.
The most dominant brand, distributed across verified millionaire driveways, is Toyota, closely trailed by Honda, with domestic Ford taking the third position.
Traditional elite status symbols like Mercedes failed to appear until the fourth slot, with BMW dropping back to fifth.
Remarkably, less than 24% of wealthy individuals operated a machine from the current production calendar year.
The underlying data indicates that over half of these affluent drivers maintained vehicles that had crossed the 2-year-old mark.
The standard millionaire navigates a vehicle averaging 4 years of road wear with roughly 42,000 recorded miles on the odometer.
These consumers aren't locked out of the premium market due to a lack of liquidity.
They are simply acutely aware of an economic reality that corporate media campaigns have conditioned the public to entirely ignore.
Aside from residential real estate errors, personal vehicles represent the absolute most devastating wealth eradication tool inside the modern consumer paradigm.
Unlike a primary residence which carries at least a baseline statistical probability of long-term capital appreciation, an automobile begins aggressively hemorrhaging its intrinsic financial value.
The precise millisecond your signature touches the dealer's paperwork. A factory, fresh vehicle strips away approximately 20% of its market value over its initial 12 months on the road.
By the conclusion of the fifth year, nearly 45% of that initial capital has permanently dissolved into thin air.
Fast forward to year 7, and the vast majority of automobiles retain less than 1/3 of their original showroom sticker valuation.
Yet despite these inescapable laws of depreciation, the typical monthly automobile note climbed to an unprecedented $765 as we crossed into 2026.
A massive segment of the population now willingly locks themselves into monthly obligations surpassing $1,000.
Worse still, 84-month financing windows, 7 consecutive years of rigid monthly extractions have become completely normalized within the consumer consciousness. This trend ensures that millions of drivers remain completely underwater on their auto loans, meaning they owe substantially more to the finance company than the actual physical vehicle is worth on
The open market for the vast majority of the loan's duration. They are systematically trading their highest leverage wealth, building years for a deteriorating asset, routing hundreds of dollars into a monthly liability instead of capturing that capital and
feeding it into productive assets that compound exponentially. Let's run the comparative math directly, because when you look at the raw spreadsheets, the contrast becomes absolutely staggering. Marcus structures his life around a rolling 3-year lease on that premium SUV at $865 a month.
Over that initial 36-month window, he funnels a grand total of $31,140 directly to the manufacturer's financing wing.
At the final maturity date, his equity balance sits at absolute zero.
He hands the keys back across the desk and immediately enters another premium lease agreement because the psychological idea of stepping down into a regular vehicle feels like an unacceptable blow
to his public status.
If he maintains this exact consumption pattern across a 30-year corporate career, he will have surrendered an average of $850 every single month for a series of machines he never actually owns.
Now observe Elena's alternative blueprint. She secured her modest sedan for $21,800 using liquid cash. She intends to extract utility from that single vehicle for a full 8-year cycle. Her holistic cost of ownership, accounting for routine mechanical upkeep, insurance premium differences, and her initial capital outlay, breaks down to roughly $335 per month over the lifetime of the vehicle. When year 8 arrives, the machine remains perfectly operational. She liquidates it on the private market for $8,500, deploys $23,500 to secure another reliable pre-owned sedan,
and resets the exact same cycle.
The net monthly delta between Marcus's status driven leasing loop and Alina's utility approach is right around $515.
Just $500 a month?
If you channel that exact $515 differential into a broad market index fund generating a historical 8% annualized return over a 30-year career, that single decision swells into an
Insulated portfolio of approximately $758,000. Take a moment to really let that final figure sink in.
More than $750,000. That isn't some abstract textbook theory.
That is the cold, unyielding mathematical reality of the wealth gap generated by choosing an $850 monthly luxury car commitment over a $335 utility transport model, compounded across a working life.
It is the difference between purchasing authentic lifetime freedom or inheriting elder anxiety.
It represents the explicit boundary between stepping away from work on your own terms at age 60 versus remaining entirely dependent on a corporate paycheck deep into your 70s, all because of
The machine parked in your driveway that you selected to manipulate the perceptions of people you don't even like.
Alina's seven-figure net worth wasn't the product of a high-risk option strategy or an unexpected family inheritance.
Data confirms that 88% of modern millionaires are completely self-made wealth builders.
They didn't inherit their wealth, they built it. Alina executed this exact playbook.
She engineered her net worth by fiercely guarding the structural gap between her incoming revenue and her outgoing lifestyle expenses.
The vehicle happens to be the primary battleground, where she shields the largest single portion of that financial gap.
In fact, her contrarian approach to automobile ownership is single-handedly responsible for roughly $610,000 of her total accumulated wealth, accounting for nearly half of her entire net worth.
Through a single structural choice she automated decades ago and simply re-executed every 8 years.
Broad market surveys show that 94% of self-made wealthy individuals consistently live significantly below their macro earning power.
Surprisingly, only 31% of them maintained a six-figure salary over the course of their careers.
1/3 of these affluent individuals never crossed the $100,000 annual income mark in any single calendar year of employment.
The 5 most common vocational tracks for these self-made millionaires were engineers, certified public accountants, school teachers, mid-level corporate managers, and attorneys.
Think about that. Teachers, a demographic universally recognized as structurally undercompensated, show up on millionaire data sheets far more frequently than high-end medical specialists or elite technology executives. Why? Because your specific professional title does not dictate your ultimate net worth.
The size of your wealth building gap does, and the automobile is precisely where the average consumer blows that gap completely wide open.
While this breakdown does not constitute formal financial planning, you must understand exactly why the automobile category separates long-term wealth outcomes more aggressively than almost any
other consumer choice. It boils down to 3 distinct pillars. The first structural pillar is sheer magnitude.
Outside of a primary mortgage or rent, an automobile payment typically represents the single largest fixed recurring monthly output in the standard domestic budget.
A $765 monthly payment exceeds what the average household spends on nutritional groceries. It outpaces what they allocate to retirement vehicles, and it dwarfs their liquid savings rate. When this single line item is artificially inflated by $400 or $500 beyond what is fundamentally required for safe, reliable transportation, the sheer velocity of that excess
consumption completely neutralizes every other positive financial habit you attempt to practice.
You can aggressively terminate every streaming subscription, brew your own coffee every morning,
pack your lunch with absolute discipline, and negotiate your utility rates down to the penny, and yet
The aggregate savings from all of those micro sacrifices combined will still fail to close the massive gap created by an inflated car payment.
The vehicle is the primary boulder on your financial scale. The daily espresso is a tiny pebble.
Most personal finance media personalities obsess over the pebbles because minor lifestyle cuts are easy to talk about, but moving the boulder is where real wealth is won or lost.
The second pillar is duration. Unlike a premium dinner, a coastal vacation, or a high-end designer coat, a modern automobile loan binds your financial future for consecutive years.
60 months, 72 months, 84 months. It functions as an unyielding, automated wealth extraction mechanism that drains your capital pipeline for the better part of an entire decade.
because the transaction occurs via automated clearing, your psychology completely habituates to the loss.
By month 6, your brain no longer registers the pain of the missing funds. It blends seamlessly into your financial backdrop.
You simply adjust your residual lifestyle around the missing capital and accept it as a mandatory cost of modern existence.
But it isn't mandatory, it was an explicit choice.
A single decision made over the course of one Saturday afternoon at a dealership finance desk now extracts $765 from your wallet every single month for 7 years, while the underlying asset loses
half its utility. The third pillar is intense social leverage. No other consumer good carries the exact same level of external identity projection as your vehicle.
Your automobile is witnessed by your immediate neighbors, your corporate peers, your social circle, the parking valet, and your extended family when you arrive for holiday gatherings.
It broadcasts an immediate, non-verbal narrative regarding your economic capabilities and your personal trajectory.
That narrative is almost always a carefully constructed work of fiction, but the observing public has no way to verify the underlying balance sheet.
The casual observer views a premium European SUV and instantly infers elite status. The same observer views a 6-year-old sedan and infers a modest middle-class existence at best.
The social programming surrounding automobile ownership is so deeply hardwired into the modern psyche that the vast majority of citizens would quite literally prefer to face functional insolvency in
an impressive vehicle than possess absolute financial security in a boring one. Marcus is the living embodiment of this psychological trap.
His premium SUV demands $865 a month, plus an additional $345 in specialized insurance because high-end vehicles carry significantly higher liability premiums, plus premium fuel requirements that
Add another $30 to every single fill-up. His holistic monthly automotive footprint clears $240 on a $96,000 income.
That represents roughly 15% of his gross monthly revenue, funneling directly into an asset that is actively dying.
Financial planning baselines universally dictate that your total transportation footprint, including payments, insurance, fuel, and upkeep, should remain strictly below 10% of your gross.
Intake, Marcus operates 50% above that critical danger line every single month, only to reset the trap every 3 years.
Contrast this with Elena's aggregate monthly automotive footprint, which averages out to roughly $490 when factoring in purchase amortization, insurance, fuel, and long-term upkeep.
On her $116,000 salary that represents a mere 5% of her gross income, she sits at exactly half the recommended risk threshold.
The annual delta between a 5% allocation and a 15% allocation on a standard professional income amounts to roughly $8,500 every single year.
That is an annual wealth transfer from Marcus's future self directly to leasing corporations, insurance conglomerates, and fuel stations year after year, decade after decade.
Meanwhile, Elena takes that exact same $8,500 annual surplus and systematically injects it into low-cost index funds, letting compound interest quietly expand her net worth until the numbers on her
screen, completely detached from her daily living expenses.
There is a profound realization highlighted in classic wealth literature concerning a specific segment of affluent individuals categorized as dedicated pre-owned buyers.
These were multimillionaires who systematically avoided the new vehicle market entirely.
They demonstrated the highest metrics of lifestyle discipline of any subgroup analyzed, and they simultaneously maintained the absolute highest ratios of net worth relative to their active income. Meaning, for every single dollar of gross income they brought in, these specific used car buyers accumulated far more raw wealth than any other segment of affluent individuals in the data pool.